Hello everyone, welcome to episode 5 of Steve's Horse Show. I am your host, Steve Cook, and today you don't understand how much paperwork we had to get through to get to this episode right here. This is Kyle Shiplett, the manager of the mill Cargil here in Oklahoma City, and never before has there been a camera in this mill, allegedly. Either that or they're trying to make us feel really special. So I have compiled a list of questions for Kyle from some questions from customers that they asked me about a typical feed store. This is not necessarily about Nutrena feeds or anything like that. This is our common problems that happen in the feed bag, I guess you could say. And so one of the most common problems, I guess, is when you get a pelleted feed. The pellet will kind of fall apart in the bag, and then once you get to the bottom of the bag, there's like a layer of fines where the pellets have all fallen apart. How does that happen in the milling process? Where's the breakdown in that?
Well, the feed during the pelleting process is reached to temperature of cooking to gelatinize the ingredients to hold it together, act as a binding agent. The micron size of the product that you grind and you're binding together, we know that if, for example, you're making concrete, the finer the particles are, the more they bind together.
Gotcha.
Okay, so you can't really take quarter-inch gravel crusher run and make a concrete slab out of it. Right. You've got to have screenings, right? I see. So really, the formulation and the pre-processing of the ingredients is very important to get that bind together. And then the heating process and cooking process and a good pellet mill die specs and management of dyes really helps combine that together. There are going to be some fines in the feed. I mean, I don't know that you don't go to a grocery store and get a bag.
Unless you put concrete in there.
Yeah, unless you, you could go to the grocery store and get a bag of cereal today and you get the bottom of the bag, there's going to be fines. Right. That's the movement of the bag and the shipment and the transportation. Really shouldn't fall apart much. And there is a spec that we do here to try and mitigate that, to validate that. During the process, we'll run pellet durability index tests on each product we run. That will ensure that the product will meet and get to the end of the shipping process, of the bagging process, to the customer, and make sure it's got a durability test to go through the handling of the product.
Crazy. I did not realize that. Next question. Okay, so sweet feed is sometimes dry, sometimes wet. Gus kind of talked to me about how sometimes a pellet, you switch and the pellet will kind of soak up a little bit more in the bag, but sometimes, the customer gets a bag of feed and it's real sticky with molasses. Sometimes it's a little bit dry, but there's not different amounts of molasses in there is what a lot of people think, that, oh, they put a bunch in this bag and then they took it all out in this bag. What happens? It's the same amount. What happens? What's the difference?
So sometimes the age of the product has play in it.
Sure.
When we build the product,
it's my fault. I can't sell it fast enough.
Could be. When we blend the product and we pellet it and we actually put it in the bag, it really looks wet, liquidy, fresh. But as the product gets in the bag, you're going to have. If you've ever opened up a bag, you see residue of that product on the inside of the bag where it was wet and everything at one time. That's the initial setup. So if you think about it for a second, and you were to put some molasses, some wet stuff in a cup, and you set that cup out and let air get to it and flow, it's going to similar to dry out, right?
Right.
It doesn't disappear. It's still there, so it's still palatable to the animal. It's not like the liquid disappeared. If it was applied at a certain rate, it's still there. It's just dried up a little bit.
Gotcha.
So sometimes, that is an appearance project.
Unfortunately, the people are buying the feed and not the animals.
Yeah, so
you have to appease them too.
Exactly. So that has a big part to do with it. Is simply the freshness of, and it's just like any other thing you buy at the grocery store. There's a freshness date on it,
right?
And when it's going to be look the freshest is when it's the newest.
Kyle's trying to pass the buck to me. He's saying that my feed is not the freshest sometimes. So That's
Well,
something that I need to work on. No, I'm just kidding. So basically, that kind of talks about, why some formulas would look different from bag to bag. That was another question that, you get a formula that looks a certain way and then it looks a little bit different. If it looks like it has a little more oats or it looks like it has a little more pellets, bag to bag, is that a mixture? Is it mixed a little bit different sometimes, or is that just mostly, things are drying up and it just tricks your eyes to...
It could be the drying up process, but also things separate. If you take a handful of anything and lay it there, depending on the size, we try and make the pellet the exact same size as the rest of the grain.
Gotcha.
So that they don't separate. But things sometimes separate during a process or during flow, depending on the weight of it. As you carry a bag, some things may fall to the bottom. Of course, on textured feed, molasses will help mitigate, or liquid ingredients will help mitigate that kind of sticking together.
Yep.
But you're still going to have some separation. It's really just an appearance thing.
Gotcha. Okay. So we have a lot of racehorse customers that have stringent testing. They get to the test barn after the race and they have super specific testing that they have to pass. What is Cargill? I know that they're super strict on the ingredients coming in and testing those, but when do y'all test the feed? You keep samples. I've seen the room. You keep samples forever. What is the testing deal? Do you test just a bag after you get done with the milling, or how does that work?
There's a lot of tests done during the process of making a feed. There's the pellet durability. There's the ingredient testing before we ever unload the ingredients. Then there's the processing. When we process the pellets, we test for the pellet durability index to make sure that it's going to hold together and it's going to be through the traveling process of manufacturing and loading and getting to the end user, the damage that could be done, it's going to hold together. And then everything that we unload and everything that we process is a sample taken of it, a retained sample that we retain to make sure that we can test it later at a later date if we need to. A lot of tests are performed and we send it to Cargill has a laboratory in Elk River, Minnesota that we send all these samples to.
So they go up.
They go up and they get put into a database with everything to ensure that run met all the requirements of the formulation and tag.
Gotcha. Makes sense.